Welcome to LLP, the Lawyer Life podcast, where the personal, professional, and political intersect. Each week, we cover a topic to help ourselves and other lawyers navigate our days with a little less stress and, ideally, a lot more fulfillment. On today's episode, we chat with Mark Sakamoto. We're asking Mark, how does a focus on possibilities and the value of time drive success and happiness? I'm Mike Anderson.
And I'm Darlene Tonelli.
Hello, Darlene.
Hello. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. We're on location today.
We are.
This is different for us.
Yes.
Usually I'm in my attic.
Right.
With my dog on the couch. There's a dog on the couch in this office.
There is a dog on the couch. It is not Rosie. It is Jackson.
Jackson, who's undeniably adorable.
Very
we can talk to Mark about how intentional that is. At any rate, we're here at the offices of Think Research to talk with our guest, Mark Sakamoto, and we'll get to him in a second. But before that, Darlene, maybe I'll just introduce him.
Okay,
cool.
Let's do it.
If you really pry, Mark Sakamoto might reveal himself to be a lawyer. But rest assured, he's far more than that. Better described as a Renaissance man, Mark has been a political advisor, a live music promoter, entrepreneur, and award-winning author. All that, and he's barely north of 40 years old. Currently acting as Executive Vice President at Think Research, an innovative health tech company, and chair of Ontario Creates, that's formerly the Ontario Media Development Corporation, Mark is coming off an amazing 2018, in which his first novel, Forgiveness, A Gift from My Grandparents, won CBC Canada Reads. In today's interview, Mark will reveal how he has reached such great heights so early by focusing on possibilities and our only true resource, time. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Mark Sakamoto.
Welcome, Mark.
Hi, guys. Hi, Darlene. Hi, Mike.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in.
We're so glad to be here.
Let's get fulfilled.
I mean, it's that easy. All you need to do, show up in an office with 2 microphones, and fulfillment arrives quickly. I have to say, my first thanks to you, I now know what a hatter is.
A hatter, yes.
And
yes.
I did not know what a hatter was. I'm sad to say that.
It is a town with a funny name. The Medicine Hat News, the local newspaper, has always been very kind to me through my career and sort of tracked me through my career after leaving Medicine Hat. And they would always call me a former hatter. So former hatter Mark Sakamoto does this and that. And then I won Canada Reads. And they kind of readopted me, so now every time I'm in the Medicine Hat News, they call me a long-time hatter, like I never left. So it's great. Now it's a great little city to come from. It was a great place to grow up. You know, growing up under that prairie sky is something really special.
What makes Medicine Hat? What's still inside of you? That Medicine Hat gave you.
Well, there's that old adage like geography is destiny, right? And I think that sort of applies at the macro political level, and I think that applies at the human level. For me, I think that, you know, growing up in Medicine Hat and in the prairies, there's a real sense of space and time. There was a real freedom in my childhood. Mm-hmm. Anything seemed possible when I was 6. I felt like I could kind of go anywhere. And, you know, maybe that's in part because there was not a lot of parental controls, but...
they could always see you.
Yeah, they could always see you. They're like, I was 4.5 hours away, but, you know, I was outside of Regina, but that's okay. They could see me.
Yeah.
But it really did leave me with a sense of the possible and that, you know, sort of the sky is the limit. My mom would let me stay up and watch The National, Milton Nash. Every night, like at 10 o'clock at night, I'd have my toast and peanut butter and milk and watch The National. And that was that program, that news broadcast was really, or probably the window into the world for me. You know, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me to see or think about the issues in Afghanistan or South Africa or, you know, those sorts of issues. So, you know, the act of her letting me do that really allowed me, I think, to think at an early age about the rest of the world. And so I was always very interested in political science. So I went to University of Calgary. As a kid, most of the prime ministers that I would watch on The National, many of them went to Dalhousie, so the law school. And so I always had in the back of my mind the desire to go to Dal. And so after my undergrad. I applied to, as most of your audience would did the same. I applied to a whole bunch of schools and ultimately chose to go to Dell. And those 3 years were just really stunning years in my life and my wife's life. Law school puts you through an intellectual rigor that is an incredibly important, whether you go on to practice law full time or not. Mm-hmm. It sort of allows you to unpack issues and problems in ways that I hadn't done before. So I really I appreciated that. It served me well in spades. As we go through my career, I'm sure we'll talk about how a lot of the people that I met on the first day of law school really impacted my career and my trajectory.
Was there a moment when you were at Dal that you thought your dream was to practice at a law firm and do traditional legal work?
I was always so impressed and inspired by those folks, my friends that sat beside me, that studied with me. We did cans together, who just absolutely lived, breathed, sweat, bled the law, right? Just loved it. I was not that person. Mm-hmm. I knew when I was writing the LSAT that I was not going to practice law my whole life. I knew that. Now, I obviously really wanted to go to law school. I really wanted to be a lawyer. And on the other end of it, I'm exceptionally glad and proud, and it was one of the best things I could have done for myself, is to go to law school. But I wasn't that person that was thinking, I'll article, I'll become a partner, maybe I'll, become a judge or anything like that. I knew that in this one lifetime that we have, I really wanted to sort of jump into the deep end of a couple of swimming pools. And so I always looked to the law as a toolkit. It was an educational process that would allow me to really unpack complicated issues that I wanted to be addressing in some capacity in my professional career. And number two, and this is completely, probably unfair and kind of even maybe antiquated, but if you have a law degree on your wall, like I do here, it's, it's there's the power of radio.
For those of you not in the room, there's a frame sitting on the floor.
You pass this automatic sniff test, like it's silly, but like you go into a room and you're like, well, I'm a lawyer, and they're like, what? Everyone's sort of like, well, he's a lawyer.
I think in some ways lawyers want to claim you as a fellow lawyer, like the way that banjo players would claim Steve Martin. It's like, look at how cool he is, and he does all this other stuff, but he's one of us.
Steve Martin, there's some rarefied air, I'll tell you. Have you ever seen him play the banjo?
I only on the television.
It's
incredible. He's a virtuoso. He's
a virtuoso, yeah.
But he's also the comedian and actor, and so in that way, that's the transition point. You've already talked about it. You wanted to do a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
And coming off of how successful your book has been, let's start there.
Sure.
How much of a leap was that to go never have written a book before? How did you have the guts to do it and go forward?
Yeah, what a story that is. I mean, holy that's jumping into the deep end. Can I swear? Can I say on this?
Podcast? Be you.
Okay.
This is about authenticity.
Me being me. Well, I need to.
Whether or not it's
I drop a lot of F-bombs in me being me, actually, so I'm gonna.
We'll cover it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was always that precocious kid that, because I really loved politics and history as a kid, I was that kid that, that grandchild that would ask questions to both my Mitsue, my grandmother, my Japanese grandmother, and Hideo, my grandfather, and Ralph McLean, my maternal grandfather. So I knew the guts of I knew the bones of their story, but I knew their story like a history book. I knew, timelines, and I knew military advancements, but I didn't know that. I never empathized with their story. I never really internalized it. I didn't know their pain because they didn't share their pain either. They didn't want to sort of bequeath that onto the generations going forward. And so I, sort of grew up having a good sense of my family's history. But, to go back to, how law school friends sort of miraculously changed the trajectory of my life, I was working at Think Research, and of all places, I was in Kuwait City doing business development in Kuwait City. So the day before, the Japanese government sort of finally got around to apologizing to Japanese Canadians. This was in 2010, late 2010, 11. And Aaron O'Toole, who was one of the first guys I met in law school, a great friend of mine, he was he's a conservative member of Parliament. He was the Veterans Affairs Minister. He wrote John Stackhouse, who at the time was running the Globe and Mail. And he said, John, our mutual friend Mark has this pretty crazy family story that sort of is in line with this apology. You should let him write an essay. And so John, and that email was completely unbeknownst to me. Like, I had no idea that email was sent.
Oh my God, no pressure.
John replied to Aaron, but CC'd me and said, well, if Sakamoto can write, I'll publish it. So on the flight back from, at that point, I sort of was in Kuwait and then Saudi Arabia. So I flew from, I think it was Jeddah to Toronto, and that's like an 18-hour flight. So I had some time on my hands. So I banged out that essay. And John did me the greatest of favors. He published it on Boxing Day, which is like the best day to be published because everyone's at home and the Globe and Mail's sitting on their table. And so HarperCollins called Michael Levine, who's one of Canada's great lawyers and best literary agents in the country, and said, do you know Mark Sakamoto? And we knew each other extremely well. And so he brought me into HarperCollins, sort of a few days later. And I thought I'd be meeting like a junior editor. And the doors opened up and there were 15 executives around the boardroom table. And Levine was like kicking me under the table like, do not F this up because we've got a book deal right here. Like if the next hour goes well, you have a book deal. And so, I remember walking up to up the steps of my house, and Jade, my wife, we had a little girl, and she was pregnant, and I'd been in Saudi Arabia and Europe and traveling a lot, and I was like, darling, I think I just got a book deal. And she was like, her face was
like a children's
what
book,
are
maybe.
you talking about?
Yeah.
And so I did just cannonball into that, and that was
I love
quite
all
a
your
thing.
pool analogies, right? Like you said that you like to seek out deep ends to dive into, and then you cannonball into this. Obviously, you've got a bit of a. I don't think it's luck. I think it goes back to this thing about you think things are possible. We talk a lot, Mike and I, on this podcast about that. When you believe it, you don't really know you can't, you didn't do the work to know that you shouldn't be able to get a book deal in your first meeting. So why not?
Why not?
All of the stars align.
I think that, I think that it's hubris not to recognize and appreciate the ball bouncing in fortuitous ways.
Right.
And so I think a part of any life is that, just like, you happen to be open and get the ball.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody just missed the ball and you caught it, right? So there's that, and then there's the execution of it. There's the I think I can do this, and I think that with that, in any sort of really meaningful way, there's also the flip side of not being afraid to fail.
Right.
Lawyers in particular, Canadians generally, we think like as entrepreneurs, as lawyers, as any walk of life, we're so damn scared of failing, and it's like that's not bad, sometimes it's a very good thing to fall flat on your face, and in fact, everyone's going to do it. So why be scared of it? Like, it's going to happen. You're going to stub your toe sometime. You don't walk around like, oh shit, there's a table, there's a couch, I might stub my toe. Like, you're going to stub your toe.
I should just not walk.
I should just not walk, right? But that's what
this couch
happens.
is fine.
That's what happens so often. And so I try to, when I sort of catch this ball or whatever, I believe I can put it in the basket or in the back of the net. I think about how I'm going to do it, knowing that path is going to change, for sure. Like, you know, a great boxing analogy is, you know, even the best plan, you know, all falls apart when you get punched in the face, right? Like, you can plan all you want, but as soon as Mike Tyson punches you in the nose, like, all bets are off, right? And not being afraid to just absolutely fail and get back up. And that's where it's interesting, you know, when you're sort of, you think you've got something really cool cooking and something's not quite right, and, you know, or sometimes it just completely falls apart, to pick yourself back up and to put it back together or keep working on it. That's really where that's the most exciting part of it in so many respects, in business or in writing or in any of the endeavors that I've done.
Well, when you talk about fear, I think a lot of lawyers are sitting there thinking, here I am at my big firm job or my firm job, or I'm doing something that doesn't quite feel like a fit, but I have this creative energy. One thing that I believe is that a lot of lawyers end up in law because they were really successful in arts, right? So a lot of arts degree, it's a real funnel to law school. Doesn't necessarily mean that you are suited for the sort of analytical law world where you've got your laws and you follow them and you write a memo about them. And so I think sitting in those offices right now, trying, how did you get to that point where you're not afraid of those things?
Well, I think that, you know, that a little bit goes back to, you know, just being lucky. Like, who you're born to is just pure dumbass luck. In my world, I mean, maybe other folks have sort of spiritual, or you choose your parents, or whatever the case may be. I don't really have that. So I think in part, where did I get that lack of fear or confidence? I think it's more confidence than anything else, because I don't really want to fail, but I have confidence that if I do fail, I can figure it out. So, you know, my dad and my mom just sort of were a big part of that. And then the next part is you sort of, you are what you know that saying, like, you are what you eat. You know, you are who you sort of spend your time with, and that the people that you're with affect you so very much. And so you really have to guard, I think, that part. So having people around you that if you fail or feel like you're getting a little wobbly, either professionally or personally, that's really important. Like, I think in my life, I've made sort of two big decisions. I've chosen my life partner, my wife, Jade, and I've chosen my business partner, Sachin Agarwal, whose office is right there. He was a lawyer at Tories, and we have been in 7 different foxholes together in our professional career, buying real estate, going into working together in politics, running this shop, you know, and there'll be like 4 or 5, 10, 15 other foxholes that we'll probably find ourselves in. So that's the second thing. And then the third big bucket is just time. For the lawyer that's sitting, you know, at any of the sister firms or any shop, like, I don't want to write this next memo, I'd rather be doing something else. I think that, but for me, time is the only thing you can't buy more of. It's it's not your most precious resource, it's your only resource. Like, that's all you have. You can buy anything else, whether that's a service, whether like anything else, you can get more of. That, when you're out of time, you're legitimately out of time. and so my biggest fear, my only fear, I think, in some ways, is lying on my deathbed, which I think of on a daily basis, not to be grim, but I really try and put myself there. Because I don't want to think, man, I left stuff out on the field. Like, when I go, I want to just be like, oh, what a run. I got to go to sleep. I got to get out of here. I'm tired.
I'm good with this.
I'm good with this.
Wow.
So then from that perspective, every day you have to sort of, I think, like, squeeze out time and just make sure you're present with all of it, and make sure what you're spending it on gets you to that final point, gets you that final destination of, oh boy, on my way out, that was a good run. And so if you're sitting on the couch, or if you're writing a stupid memo about, some damn traffic violation, and you don't want to be doing that, then I think you should think hard about what you're doing with your time.
I read a quote, and it said, the problem is you think you have time. And it was so fundamental to me, because I realized that, like, our whole society is structured that you do your work and then you're going to have this time. At the end of your life, you're going to have this time where you're going to, retire and, relax and do all the things you wish that you were going to do. And I've always had the perspective that I'm going to have a mini retirement always,
Totally right.
As I'm going through, because I don't know that I have time,
Totally
so I think
right.
that's very wise.
So, yeah, I think, number one, I think retirement as a concept is going to dramatically change. I mean, it already is dramatically changing, but I think that, I don't want to retire. I never really want to retire, I don't think. But to your point, I think that's exactly right. What I want to do is just be happy, very content and excited about every single part of what I'm doing, right. Whether that's pushing my daughter Tommy on the swing, or traveling with them, taking good chunks of time out of the professional career to do that, or be doing work at my desk, and what I'm doing I want to be really engaged in and excited about. So I think that's right. I mean, finding work-life balance to me is such, I can't, it's difficult for me to relate to that. I just want to have a balanced life. And all of the professional things that I'm doing is I think of it like a body of work, almost like an art, like a painter does or a director would.
We've seen, we've read the articles about your commute going from Ottawa to Toronto when you were doing that, and your decision to stop doing that. You didn't want to be a commuting dad. So we see that you have made calls throughout your life about time and to prioritization. What are the ways that you prioritize and guard and build time in a day?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, that's a good. I remember that. So just like most parents, you don't really know what's about to happen to your heart until it actually happens, and people can talk to you about it, but you just can't really internalize it. And so I sort of thought, well, my time in politics, I started working with Michael Ignatieff, Sachin, and a few other folks when he was still teaching at Harvard. And I really came to really respect and really have great affection for him and his wife Susanna. And we would travel the country together in the early days. And so for me, once he won the leadership, I went up for what I said to him when he won, the day he won. I said, well, I'll come up for 6 months. And those things always, it was 18 months in, and Jade we had our baby, and I thought, well, maybe I'll commute 3 days a week and not instead of the 5, and because my wife wisely really dislikes politics, and so she stayed in Toronto, and I would commute back and forth. I basically lived at the Porter Airport. I think it was 3 weeks after Mia was born, our eldest daughter. I went back. I went to Ottawa and stayed one night in the condo that I had, and I woke up in the morning and I was just like, what the hell are you doing? Your family's hundreds of miles away, and and your daughter's 3 weeks old. This is no way to start her life out. And so I basically left that very afternoon. And so what that illustrates is, proof's in the pudding. So often folks will say, well, my most important role is this, but then the proof doesn't sort of span that out. So I do look back on that decision as something that I'm proud of, I think, But it was just sort of a no-brainer to me. I just needed to be close by. She's those children. I mean, especially think about time, and kids grow up so fast today. They're only they need you for a short period of time, and then they, that you're like the bow and they're the arrow, and you need to make sure as you're pulling that bow back
that's good.
That it's a really strong bow, and because you want them to shoot far, and so you can't dial that shit in.
There are a couple of key moments in your book where at one point you're going through a really hard time in your life, and your wife says to you, remember what you're made of. And I love the inscription. It's very tied to what you're saying, because in the inscription, the book is dedicated to your two daughters, and it says, "So you know what you're made of." And to me, for lawyers, this is part of your story. Like, your kids are going to know when they are old that you made that decision. It's public. But there are all kinds of private ways that a lawyer or someone who works too hard in their career, we happen to focus on lawyers, but this is general life advice.
Yeah, of course.
They know that you made those choices. They know that you took a trade-off. They know that you could have done this big thing and you chose them. And as you say, we talk about how the days are long, the years are short with kids, and it really is such a short time, maybe 12 years till they don't really want to hang out with you on the weekend. 12 years.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been out of law school longer than that, much longer than that.
But you went when you were 10, so that's great.
Totally.
She's a Doogie Howser.
But yeah, so I think the more we can highlight those examples and sort of get the message out that it's not the only way to provide for your kids to make a lot of money and have a traditional secure career, right?
Yeah.
Providing for them and knowing that that you prioritize them.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing.
Where the rubber really hits the road, or what really matters, isn't necessarily time away, but when you're with them, you're actually f***ing with them.
Present. Yeah.
You are present. Like, this thing just keeps on buzzing, but that's fine. So let it buzz, right? Because that is just that's right now. I'm with you, or I'm with you too, and this is really the thing that I've committed to it. It's important. So this is all we have, and that's sort of like maybe a little Buddhist. Like, I do have sort of big lines of my family that I'm certainly influenced by Buddhist thought, but the big thing about Buddhism that I love is just like you don't have anything except for right now. Like, this is all you have. Doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account, what happened on the way here, all of that stuff. Like, this is all you have, and putting yourself in that frame of mind, I think is exceptionally powerful, and kids pick up on that even more than adults. We're used to sort of distraction. We're used to, Mike, if you grabbed your phone right now and started texting, I wouldn't think anything of it. Maybe.
Well, this conversation is so boring. Just so hard to not do it.
And they know if you're distracted and not paying full attention, and so I just sort of try and be all in all the time.
So that seems to be a clear driver of like where your intentionality is every day. Are there other pieces of advice or other things that you've read that you would put up on a wall or remind yourself every day?
Say no a lot. If you're actually going to be present in everything you do, then say no to every single thing that you don't think you're going to be 100% present in. Don't mail it in. Just say no, and you're better off. So much stuff. Like, people think, oh, look at my calendar. I'm so busy, or I just build all this stuff, or I have all these non-billable hours, and it's like people for some reason seem to equate busyness with import, busyness with productivity. That's completely batshit crazy. I think. Like, I like those days where I'm like, oh, here's a big chunk of time where I don't have anything. And those are your most productive periods. I love having those days where I can just pop into Sachin's office and sit on his couch and just be like, what about this? What about that? I read this in The Economist. What do you think about that? And that's where some of our, we've generated good amounts of value and being able to hire a ton of people based on those days where it's like, no, I'm not running from this to this to this to this to this to this to this. So so I know it, if you're an articling student, you're not saying no to anything. I get that, or anything professional, but as you are able to do so, say no to professionally and personally. Say no to anything you don't want to be 150% into.
Mm-hmm.
Good advice.
And the more you sort of do it with time, the more you do it in your sort of material life,
mm-hmm.
and the two sort of self-sustained. Like it's difficult if you're spiraling down. It's actually really difficult to stop spiraling down, and if you're spiraling up, it's really difficult sort of not to, like,
mm-hmm.
there's just a momentum there.
Of course. And to be successful, you've given us so much wisdom, so thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
We are going to take a break and then come back with our goods and gripes. Will you stay with us?
Perfect.
The Lawyer Life podcast is brought to you by Inter Alia Law, experienced legal counsel when and where you need us. To learn more about Inter Alia, visit the website. That's spelled INTERALIA-law.com. Thank you. And we are back with our goods and gripes. Goods are things we want to support. Gripes are things that annoy us. Mark, send it over to you.
For me in my life, the good that I've spent the last few days thinking about and really wanting to extend and expand in my life is my yoga practice. So, and meditation. Those are two things that are sort of my own personal gift to myself. And they really help me in a whole bunch of ways, professionally and personally and emotionally and intellectually. So that's something that is very good in my life that I want to have more of. The gripe, I'm going to gripe against just the gripe, I think. I'm pretty sick and tired of hearing gripes. I mean, and I say that particularly in Canada. I've had the fortune of really traveling around the world and I've seen a lot of it. And holy smokes, I mean, we live as close to heaven as this is not a perfect union. This is not a perfect country, and we are letting people down all over the place, particularly our Indigenous brothers and sisters. But in terms of safety and what, like, it just the list goes on and on and on. We are as close to heaven on earth as one can hope for, and many do. So many do hope for, and so I'm griping against the gripe.
Stop with the grapes.
Stop with the gripes.
You're living the best place in the best time.
Just smile,
ever.
man.
That's good.
Great. I think that's great. I think we could leave it on that.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
Thanks again.
Right on.
Thanks
Thanks
a
a
lot.
lot. That was fun.
That's it for this week's episode of LLP. Thanks to Inter Alia Law for presenting the podcast and to Nick Fowler for composing and performing our music. See our show notes for his website. Don't forget, we love feedback. Please comment in the review section or subscribe or like. We'd appreciate it greatly. That's it. Talk soon.